"You spend your last dollar for me. I have to bear you a child," said the slave Apache woman. The sun had barely risen over the rugged hills of the southwest when the settler walked slowly along the dusty trail. The air was dry and sharp, and the smell of sagebrush mixed with the faint scent of smoke from distant fires. He was a man who had seen hard times. His clothes were worn, patched in several places, and his boots had holes in the soles. Every step he took sent small clouds of dust into the air, but he didn't mind. He had a long way to go, and his mind was occupied with thoughts of survival. Each day brought new challenges: finding enough food, securing water, and keeping away from trouble. Life had been unforgiving, but he had learned to keep moving forward no matter how tired he felt. Ahead, near a small cluster of trees, he noticed a figure crouched low to the ground. At first, he thought it was just another traveler, but as he got closer, he saw it was a woman. Her clothes were torn, and her hair was tangled with dust. She was not like the settlers he had seen before. There was a wildness in her eyes and a grace in her movements that suggested she belonged to the land itself. She was small, but there was a strength in her posture that made him pause. He could see fear in her eyes, but also a kind of determination that told him she had survived many hardships. The man had little to give. His pockets were nearly empty, and he had spent the last of his money on supplies for himself. He was starving, and the thought of sharing even a little made his stomach ache. But when he looked at her, he saw something he could not ignore. She was in need, and he knew that refusing to help would weigh on him for the rest of his life. He reached into his coat and pulled out the last dollar he had. It was all he owned, but he held it tightly in his hand and walked toward her. "Here," he said softly, holding out the coin. "Take this. Use it for what you need." Her eyes narrowed, studying him carefully. "Why would you give this to me?" she asked, her voice quiet but firm. There was a mixture of gratitude and caution in her tone, as if she were trying to decide whether he was friend or foe. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. I can't leave you here like this." His voice was rough, shaped by years of hardship, but there was a sincerity in it that could not be faked. She hesitated, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the dollar. When her fingers closed around it, she felt the weight of it, not just the coin itself, but the gesture behind it. It was more than money. It was a signal that someone cared enough to offer help, even when they had nothing to give. She nodded once, a small gesture that carried more meaning than words could express. Then, almost without thinking, she said something that made the man pause. "I have to bear you a child." Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of her life's struggles, her hopes, and the complicated path ahead. The words hung in the air, strange and sudden, but they did not carry anger or demand. They were simply an acknowledgement of a truth she had decided to share, one that would change the course of both their lives. The man's eyes widened and he looked at her, trying to understand what she meant. He had expected gratitude, maybe even a cautious smile, but not this. He took a step back, unsure how to respond. His mind raced. He had given his last dollar to help her, and now she was telling him something that made him question everything he thought he knew about kindness, responsibility, and human connection. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind moved through the trees, rustling the leaves, and the world seemed to hold its breath along with them. Slowly he reached out and touched her arm, a gentle gesture meant to reassure her that he was not angry, nor was he planning to leave. I didn't expect that," he said finally. "I just wanted to help. I didn't ask for anything in return. But life is hard, and sometimes we make choices because we have no other options. I will carry this child, and it will be a part of both of us. Not because I asked for it, but because it is the path we are on now." He had given his last dollar to help someone, and now that simple act had created a bond that neither of them could ignore. He realized that life was full of unexpected consequences, and sometimes even the smallest gestures could lead to profound changes. As they walked together toward a small stream nearby, he thought about the long road ahead. There would be challenges, certainly. People in the town would not understand their connection, and the land itself was unforgiving. But for now, he focused on the simple act of helping her drink from the clear water and rest her tired body. She, in turn, shared stories of the land, of the animals, and of her people. Her words were filled with wisdom, even as they revealed the hardships she had endured. They did not speak much of the future. That was a conversation for another time. For now, they were bound by a single moment of generosity and a shared recognition of their mutual need to survive. The man thought about how strange life could be, how a single coin could lead to such a complicated web of emotion and responsibility. And the woman, holding the dollar tightly, felt a cautious sense of security for the first time in a long while. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, painting the hills with golden light, they moved together along the dusty path. Each step was careful, each glance filled with unspoken understanding. They were two people from different worlds, brought together by circumstance, kindness, and the unpredictable twists of fate. Neither of them knew exactly what would happen next, but both felt the quiet truth that their lives had just changed forever. And in that moment, with the desert stretching endlessly around them, they discovered something remarkable. Even in a world filled with hardship, cruelty, and uncertainty, human kindness could create connections that were stronger than fear, stronger than pain, and stronger than the distance between their lives. A single dollar had done more than buy food or water. It had created a fragile, delicate bond that would shape the rest of their story. The days that followed were filled with quiet tension and cautious observation. The man and the woman moved together along the rugged trails, learning to share the harsh land without speaking too much. Each step brought new challenges, yet each moment also allowed them to observe the strength and resilience of the other. The woman, though small and appearing fragile, carried herself with a dignity and calm that seemed almost impossible in her situation. She had been through hardships that the man could barely imagine, yet she faced each day with careful thought, always planning, always alert. The man, in turn, was not as strong or skilled as he had once believed. He had survived by sheer stubbornness and determination, but the desert and the hills had worn him down. His muscles ached constantly, and his mind was always on edge, wondering how he would find water, shelter, and food. Yet in her presence he discovered a strange relief. Her sharp eyes and careful movements reminded him to slow down, to think before acting. She knew the land in ways he could not, and her knowledge saved them both more than once from dangerous missteps. One afternoon, they came across a small cave near a dry creek bed. The woman suggested they stop and rest there for a while. Inside, the air was cool and safe, a small respite from the relentless sun and heat. They built a tiny fire from dry twigs and roots, careful not to smoke themselves out. The man used his last bit of supplies to cook some dried meat and share what little food he had. She accepted it with quiet gratitude, but her mind was never fully at ease. While eating, the woman told him stories of her people. She spoke of the land, the rivers, the animals, and the seasons with a reverence that reminded the man how small he was in the grand scheme of things. She described the ceremonies and dances, the songs that told stories of ancestors, and the lessons passed down through generations. He listened, fascinated, realizing that her life had been shaped by a deep connection to the land and to her people, something he had never experienced. "You have survived so much," he said quietly. "I can't imagine what it must have been like. The land teaches you, people sometimes, but trust is rare, and that is why your coin, your act, surprised me. It was a choice I did not expect." In that quiet cave, he felt a strange sense of connection, a bond not yet named but already powerful. Over the next several days, they settled into a cautious routine. The woman taught him how to find water hidden under rocks, how to track small animals, and which plants could be eaten safely. He, in turn, shared small skills he had learned as a settler, making simple tools, tending fires, and creating temporary shelters. Each skill exchanged brought them closer, though neither of them spoke much about the words the woman had said before, about bearing a child. The topic lingered silently, like a shadow behind every cautious smile and thoughtful glance. One evening, while the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, they sat by the fire and watched the stars appear one by one. The desert night was quiet except for the occasional rustle of an animal in the distance. The man finally spoke. "I keep thinking about what you said," he admitted. "About the child. I don't know what to say. I didn't expect any of this. That is all I can say for now." Responsibility for helping her survive, fear of the unknown consequences of her words, and awe at her quiet strength in facing her own future. As the days passed, they encountered other people, travelers, settlers, and occasional hostile strangers. The woman's instincts were sharp, and she often warned him to hide, move silently, or avoid certain paths. Without her guidance, the man realized he would have been lost more than once. He also noticed how cautious she was, how she observed every person and every movement with attention. This made him respect her even more. She was not just surviving, she was guiding them both through danger. Despite the challenges, moments of shared laughter began to appear. Sometimes they would stumble upon a small stream or a patch of edible berries, and their joy in finding such treasures was simple but profound. The man would laugh at his own clumsy attempts to climb rocks or catch fish, and the woman's laughter was like music, light and freeing in the heavy air of survival. These moments reminded them both that even in hardship, life could hold small, beautiful surprises. But beneath the moments of laughter, there was always the unspoken tension of the future. The woman carried the knowledge of what she had declared, and the man felt the weight of what it could mean. He could not yet imagine how their lives would change if she truly bore a child. He worried about safety, about acceptance, about how people would judge them. Yet he also realized that fear alone could not guide them. They had to act, move, and survive, trusting each other even when the path ahead was unclear. One morning, as the sun rose in soft pinks and golds, they arrived at a shallow river. The water ran clear, and the man knelt to fill their small containers. The woman watched him silently, and for a moment the world felt simple. He handed her some water, and she drank gratefully. Then, without breaking eye contact, she spoke. "Your kindness has changed something in me," she said. "I do not know if I can ever repay it. But I carry it with me, as I carry everything else." It had brought them together, taught them lessons about humanity, and created a fragile bond that could grow stronger or be broken, depending on their choices. As they continued along the river, the woman stopped suddenly, pointing to the tracks of a deer in the sand. She smiled slightly, and he realized that she had begun to trust him more, that she felt safe enough to share her knowledge without hesitation. And he, in turn, began to see her not just as a survivor, but as a guide, a companion, and perhaps even a mirror of his own resilience. By the end of the second week, they had settled into a pattern: travel during the cooler hours, rest in shaded areas during the heat, and rely on each other for guidance and protection. The man felt a growing sense of respect and admiration for the woman. She had survived captivity, harsh landscapes, and the dangers of strangers, yet she carried herself with dignity and intelligence that made him both humble and grateful. At night, when the fire crackled and the stars spread across the sky, they would sit quietly, sharing stories, hopes, and fears in small pieces. Sometimes they did not speak at all, simply observing the vastness of the land and feeling the quiet connection between them. Each day brought new challenges, but also a slow realization that survival was not a solitary endeavor. Trust, compassion, and shared experience were as vital as water, food, and shelter. In the safety of their small camp, the man began to understand the woman's earlier words more clearly. "I have to bear you a child" was not a demand, nor a threat, nor even a confession. It was a statement of reality, of the entwining of their lives, and a reflection of how survival, kindness, and circumstance could shape the course of human lives. He felt both fear and awe at the truth of it, realizing that every decision, every act of kindness, and every step forward could ripple through time in ways he could not yet see. And so, as the sun set behind the distant hills, painting the sky with the colors of fire and hope, they sat together by the water's edge. The man, though unsure of the future, felt a strange comfort in knowing that he was not alone. The woman, though cautious and aware of the dangers ahead, felt a growing sense of security, knowing that at least for now, she had someone who would help her navigate a world that had often been cruel and unkind. In that quiet, fragile moment, they both understood a simple truth. Survival was not just about enduring the elements or avoiding danger. It was about connection, trust, and the unexpected kindness that could transform lives. And though the path ahead was uncertain, they were walking it together, each step a testament to resilience, courage, and the fragile, enduring power of human compassion. The days had grown longer and hotter, and the desert showed no mercy to those who traveled its paths. Yet the man and the woman had settled into a rhythm, moving cautiously through the rugged land, finding small sources of water and seeking hidden shade when the sun was at its fiercest. Their bond had grown quietly but steadily. Trust had been earned through shared survival, small acts of care, and the recognition of each other's strength. But now, the weight of what the woman had said earlier, the words about bearing a child, began to press on both of them more heavily. It was during one of these long afternoons, while they rested under a lone mesquite tree near a shallow stream, that the tension became unavoidable. The woman was quietly tending a small fire, preparing roots she had found to boil for a simple meal. The man watched her silently for a while, thinking about all they had endured together. He realized that, despite the hardships, her presence had changed something inside him. He felt responsible for her in ways he had never expected, and at the same time, he felt a growing sense of admiration for her courage, her knowledge of the land, and her quiet dignity. Finally, unable to hold back his thoughts any longer, he spoke. "I keep thinking about what you said," he said, his voice low and careful. "About the child. I don't know what to say. I didn't expect this." "You did not ask for this," she said softly. "I do not demand anything from you, but it is the truth of my life now. I carry this responsibility and I cannot ignore it. I wanted you to know because it changes everything we do from here on." He had always believed that survival was about skill, determination, and a little luck. But now he realized that life was also about choices, morality, and the delicate threads that connected one person to another. The woman's words were a reminder of that truth, and he could not turn away from it, no matter how uncertain he felt. For a while, they sat in silence, listening to the soft rush of water over rocks, feeling the gentle warmth of the sun on their skin. Both were lost in thought. The man thought about what it meant to take responsibility for another life in such a fragile and unpredictable world. The woman considered what it meant to trust someone enough to share a truth that could not be undone. It was a quiet, intense moment, filled with the weight of their shared history and the uncertainty of the future. In the days that followed, their routine continued, but the emotional complexity of their situation became more apparent. The woman was no longer just a guide or a survivor. She was someone whose presence demanded careful thought and consideration. The man found himself thinking about her constantly, about how to protect her, how to honor her trust, and how to prepare for what might come. He realized that survival was no longer just a personal struggle. It was a shared responsibility, and every choice he made could have consequences for both of them. The woman, too, felt the tension. She had been independent and self-reliant for so long that trusting someone else was difficult. Yet the man's consistent kindness and careful attention slowly began to break down the walls she had built around herself. She could see that he did not seek to control her, that he did not expect anything in return for his help. And that made her feel a cautious sense of safety, a fragile hope that they could navigate the harsh world together. One afternoon, as they rested near a small oasis, the woman spoke again about the future. "I know you are unsure," she said, her voice steady. "I know this is not what either of us expected, but we cannot ignore what is happening. The child I carry, it will shape our lives, whether we are ready or not. We must think about how we survive together and what we are willing to do to protect each other." He also realized that the bond between them had grown beyond simple survival. It was now a complex web of trust, responsibility, and human connection that demanded careful thought and courage. As the days passed, they encountered new challenges that tested both their physical endurance and their emotional strength. A sudden storm forced them to seek shelter in a narrow canyon, where water rushed violently through the rocks, threatening to sweep away everything in its path. The woman guided them to a safe ledge, her quick thinking and knowledge of the land saving them from disaster. The man, despite his fear, marveled at her courage and determination. He realized that trust was not just about words, it was about actions, about showing that one could be relied upon when the world was at its harshest. During the storm, they huddled together under the rocky overhang, sharing warmth and silence. The man felt a deep sense of connection to the woman, understanding that their bond had grown stronger in ways he had not anticipated. He could see the same recognition in her eyes, a quiet acknowledgement that they were now bound together by circumstance, by survival, and by the unspoken promise of mutual care. When the storm passed, the desert seemed calmer, almost serene. The air was fresh and cool, and the land glistened with droplets of rain. The man and the woman continued their journey, moving carefully but with a renewed sense of purpose. They spoke more openly now, sharing stories of their pasts, their fears, and their hopes for the future. The woman described her family and the lessons she had learned from her people, while the man recounted his struggles as a settler, the losses he had endured, and the moments that had shaped him. Through these stories, they came to understand each other more deeply, finding empathy and respect in the shared experience of hardship. Yet even as they grew closer, the reality of the woman's words lingered in the background. The thought of the child she carried added a new layer of complexity to their relationship. The man felt a growing sense of responsibility, knowing that his actions would directly affect both the woman and the life she carried. He struggled with fear and uncertainty, but he also recognized that avoiding the truth would not help either of them. They had to face their situation honestly, with courage and care. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the woman and the man sat by a small fire, the sky painted in brilliant shades of red and gold. The woman spoke quietly, almost to herself. "We cannot know what the future holds," she said, "but we can choose how we face it. We can choose trust, courage, and care. That is all we can do." It was about connection, about choosing to care for another person even when it was difficult, and about facing uncertainty with courage and honesty. He knew that the bond between them had grown into something fragile but powerful, a force that could guide them through the challenges ahead. As night fell, they lay on the ground near the fire, staring at the stars. The desert was quiet except for the occasional rustle of an animal in the distance. Both felt the presence of the other deeply, a silent acknowledgement of the trust and understanding that had grown between them. They did not need to speak. The bond was clear in their actions, their shared experiences, and the quiet moments of care and attention that had built a foundation of trust. In the darkness, the man thought about the woman's words, about the child, and about the fragile, unpredictable journey ahead. He knew that fear and uncertainty would always be present, but he also understood that courage, kindness, and shared responsibility could create a path forward. The woman, too, felt the weight of their situation, but she also felt a growing sense of hope. For the first time in a long while, she felt that she was not alone, that she had someone she could trust to face the harsh world beside her. And so, as the desert stretched endlessly around them, they continued to walk together, step by step, facing the trials of the land and the complexities of their shared lives. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities for trust, courage, and connection. They had survived the harshest parts of the land so far, but now they were learning to survive each other's fears, hopes, and vulnerabilities. In this way, they discovered a quiet truth, that even in a world filled with uncertainty and danger, human connection, trust, and shared responsibility could create strength far greater than the sum of their individual efforts. By the time the moon rose high over the desert hills, casting silver light across the sand and rocks, they had reached a fragile understanding. Survival was no longer just about skill or strength. It was about facing life together, making choices with care, and accepting the truth of one another's lives. The man and the woman had begun a journey that was not just about enduring the land, but about enduring each other, about creating a bond that could withstand fear, uncertainty, and the unknown challenges that awaited them. In that quiet, moonlit desert, both felt a sense of determination. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they also knew that together, they could face it with courage, respect, and a growing, fragile hope that the future could hold more than survival. It could hold connection, understanding, and perhaps even something like peace. The sun had barely risen when they reached the edge of a narrow canyon, its walls jagged and steep, shadows stretching across the dusty path. The man and the woman had been traveling for days, moving cautiously through the harsh landscape. Each step forward was measured, careful, because the desert was unforgiving, and danger could appear in the blink of an eye. The woman paused and surveyed the area, her sharp eyes scanning the cliffs and the rocky terrain. She could sense something off in the stillness, a subtle shift in the air that spoke of movement nearby. "Be careful," she whispered, placing a hand on his arm. "We are not alone." Now the awareness of possible threats weighed heavily on both of them. They knew that anyone could appear suddenly, a traveler, a band of hostile settlers, or even an animal driven by hunger. Every choice, every step could decide their survival. As they moved forward, the woman spotted faint tracks in the sand. She knelt and examined them carefully. "They are recent," she said quietly. "Not far ahead, someone or something is following us." The silence was tense, almost suffocating, but it allowed them to feel the rhythm of the desert, to anticipate danger before it struck. Hours passed in careful movement. The sun climbed high, casting the canyon walls in harsh light. By midday, they reached a small alcove where they could rest. The woman set down their few belongings and began to prepare a simple meal from the dried roots and grains they carried. The man sat nearby, watching, feeling the weight of the day pressing down on him. He thought about the child she carried, about the bond that had grown between them, and about the fragile trust they had built. Each moment of calm felt temporary, like the desert itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what they would do next. Suddenly, a noise echoed through the canyon, a distant shout followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. Both froze. The woman's hand went to the man's arm again, steadying him. "Stay quiet," she whispered. "We must not be seen." She had dealt with men like this before, men who saw the land and the people on it as obstacles to be controlled or conquered. "We cannot fight them," she said softly. "We must move carefully or they will notice us." Every step was slow, measured, and silent. They knew that one mistake could reveal their presence, and the consequences would be dire. The desert was merciless, and they had already faced enough danger to understand that survival required both skill and patience. By evening, they had reached a small cluster of trees near a hidden stream. The woman allowed herself a small sigh of relief. "We are safe for now," she said, "but we cannot stay long, they may follow us." And the desire to survive, that is all. Every choice we make will affect the future. He felt a growing sense of responsibility, realizing that his actions, decisions, and care would directly impact not only the woman but the life she carried. Over the next few days, they moved cautiously through the desert, finding hidden sources of water, avoiding paths that seemed too exposed, and resting only when they could be reasonably safe. The woman taught him new skills: how to recognize signs of approaching people or animals, how to use the terrain to their advantage, and how to travel in silence to avoid detection. Each lesson increased their chances of survival, and each moment of shared effort deepened the bond between them. One evening, as they camped under the open sky, the woman paused to look at the horizon. "We must think about shelter for the future," she said. "This journey cannot last forever. We need a safe place, hidden from danger, where we can survive and protect the child." He thought about what she had said about the child, and about how their lives were now intertwined in ways he could not have imagined. Fear still lingered, but it was tempered by determination and the growing strength of their connection. Days turned into weeks, and the challenges of the desert tested them continually. They faced sudden storms, extreme heat, and the constant uncertainty of whether the travelers or other strangers would appear. Each challenge required careful planning, courage, and mutual trust. The man found himself relying more on the woman's instincts, and she, in turn, relied on his steady hands and willingness to act when needed. Together, they navigated the dangers with a growing sense of teamwork and understanding. One afternoon, they encountered a small group of wild animals, a family of coyotes that had strayed too close to their path. The woman acted quickly, using her knowledge of the land and animal behavior to guide them safely away. The man watched in awe, realizing that her calm and decisive actions had once again prevented disaster. He began to see that survival was not just about strength or skill. It was about knowledge, intuition, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. As the sun set each day, painting the sky with brilliant hues of orange and purple, they reflected on their journey. The man thought about how much he had learned from the woman, not just about survival, but about courage, trust, and the quiet power of human connection. The woman considered how much she had come to rely on him, how his presence had become a source of stability and care. Though fear and uncertainty were always present, they found comfort in knowing that they faced the challenges together. One night under a sky full of stars, the woman spoke about her hopes and fears. "I know the road ahead will be difficult," she said, "but we have survived so far. We can continue. We can protect each other, and we can find a place to call safe. The child gives us a reason, a purpose to keep moving forward no matter the danger." He understood that their journey was no longer just about survival. It was about hope, about the possibility of building a life together, and about ensuring that the child would have a chance to live safely. Fear and uncertainty would always be present, but courage, determination, and trust could guide them through even the harshest challenges. As they continued their journey, the desert revealed both its beauty and its danger. The sun rose and fell, painting the land in ever-changing colors. The wind swept across the hills, carrying dust and whispers of the unknown. Yet the man and the woman moved forward, step by step, relying on each other and the bond that had grown stronger with every challenge. They understood that the world was unforgiving, but that human connection, courage, and shared responsibility could create strength far greater than any obstacle. By the time the moon rose high in the sky, casting a silver light over the desert, they had reached a new understanding. Survival was no longer just about enduring the harsh land. It was about facing danger together, protecting each other, and finding a way to create hope in a world that often offered little. The man and the woman had faced trials, fear, and uncertainty, and yet they had emerged stronger, more aware of their bond, and more determined to continue their journey. In the quiet desert night, they rested side by side, knowing that the road ahead would bring even more challenges. But they were no longer afraid to face them together. Each obstacle they overcame, each careful choice they made, and each moment of trust and courage strengthened the fragile hope that had grown between them. And though the future remained uncertain, they were ready to face it with determination, respect, and the quiet knowledge that together they could endure anything. The journey had been long and harsh, filled with dangers, challenges, and moments of quiet fear. Yet the man and the woman had survived together, each step a testament to their courage, trust, and determination. Now, as the days grew shorter and the desert sun began to cool, they had finally reached a small valley hidden behind a line of rugged hills. The place was quiet and fertile, with a gentle stream flowing through it and patches of trees that provided shade. It was not perfect, but it was safe, and it held the promise of a future. The woman knelt by the stream, letting the cool water wash her hands. She breathed deeply, feeling a rare sense of relief. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to hope that they might have a place where they could rest, gather strength, and prepare for the child she carried. The man stood nearby, surveying the valley, his eyes softening as he saw the possibilities. He thought about the challenges they had faced, the storms, the wild animals, the dangers of strangers, and the countless moments when survival had depended on their careful choices and mutual trust. "This place," he said quietly, "it could work. We could stay here. Protect ourselves. And the child, this place will give the child a chance." The woman studied the land, noting the plants that could be eaten, the areas where water would be clean, and the paths that could be used to avoid any unwanted visitors. Their combined knowledge and experience turned the valley into a place of potential safety, a fragile home where survival could become stability. As they worked, the woman spoke quietly about the future. "We cannot know what will happen," she said, "but we can decide how to face it. We have survived so far because we trusted each other, because we acted with care and thought. That trust must continue. We must protect ourselves, and we must protect the child. Everything we do now will shape the life to come." Their journey had been more than a struggle against the desert and its dangers. It had been a journey of learning to survive together, to care for each other, and to face the unknown with courage. He understood that their bond was no longer just about survival. It was about hope, responsibility, and the possibility of creating a life that had meaning beyond the daily struggle to endure. Days turned into weeks as they built their small shelter, gathered food, and explored the valley. Each day brought new lessons and small victories. The man learned to recognize subtle signs of approaching animals or humans, guided by the woman's instincts and knowledge. She, in turn, relied on his steady hands and problem-solving skills to create tools, dig for water, and fortify their shelter. Together, they transformed the valley into a safe haven, a place where they could face the future with cautious hope. One afternoon, as the sun bathed the valley in golden light, the woman paused and looked at the man. "I feel the child moving," she said softly, placing a hand on her belly. "It is strong and alive. It reminds me why we must keep going, why we must protect this place." He realized that survival had evolved into something greater, a chance to create a life filled with care, hope, and stability, even in a world that often seemed harsh and unforgiving. As the weeks passed, the woman and the man grew closer, not only through shared work and survival but through quiet moments of connection. They spoke of their pasts, their losses, and their dreams. They laughed together when small joys appeared, like finding a hidden patch of berries or watching a family of birds take flight. They comforted each other during moments of fear, like storms or nights filled with strange noises. Through all of it, the bond between them strengthened, grounded in trust, respect, and the shared understanding of the fragility of life. One morning, the woman woke the man before sunrise. "It is time," she said softly. "The child is coming soon. We must prepare." Together, they gathered soft materials for bedding, cleaned the small shelter, and prepared what little they could for the arrival of the child. When the moment came, it was quiet, filled with the raw intensity of life itself. The woman's strength and courage shone through as the man assisted her, staying close, offering support, and ensuring that she felt safe. Hours passed, each one stretching long and tense until finally a small cry echoed through the shelter. The child had arrived. The man felt a surge of relief and awe. He looked at the woman who was exhausted but smiling through her fatigue. Their eyes met, and in that silent glance they shared a profound understanding. They had survived, endured, and now, together, they had created new life. The child was small, fragile, and perfect, a living symbol of hope and resilience. In the days that followed, they settled into a new routine. The man and the woman took turns caring for the child, gathering food and tending to their shelter. The valley, once wild and unforgiving, had become a home. The child's presence brought new purpose and motivation, reminding them why survival was not just about enduring, but about protecting, nurturing, and building a future. Even in moments of exhaustion, they found joy. The woman would watch the child's tiny hands grasp the air, the man would hum softly while rocking the baby to sleep, and together, they would share quiet smiles that spoke of the strength of their bond. Their love for the child was matched by their growing respect and care for each other. It was a new chapter, one born from hardship but filled with hope. As the seasons changed, the valley became more than just a safe place. It became a symbol of resilience. The man and the woman had faced the desert, danger, and uncertainty together. They had survived because of trust, courage, and shared effort. Now, with the child growing strong, they understood that the journey was not just about survival, but about creating a life that mattered, one small step at a time. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, the man and the woman sat by the stream, holding the child between them. The air was calm, the water reflected the golden light, and the world seemed still for a moment. The woman spoke softly, her hand resting on the man's. "We have made it this far," she said. "We have survived, and now we have hope. That is something no danger, no hardship can ever take from us." Yet through it all, they had endured together. He realized that survival was not just about strength or skill, but about the quiet power of trust, courage, and human connection. In the quiet of the valley, as night fell and stars filled the sky, they made a silent promise to each other. They would continue to protect the child, to nurture life in the harsh desert, and to face whatever challenges came with courage and care. The journey had been long, filled with fear and uncertainty, but it had also been filled with hope, trust, and the quiet strength of human connection. And so, as the moon cast silver light across the valley, the man and the woman sat together with the child, knowing that they had survived the worst and had built something far more important than mere existence. They had created a life filled with care, courage, and hope, a life that would endure, shaped by the choices, trust, and love that had carried them through the harshest days of the desert. For the first time in a long while, both felt a deep peace. The world was still unpredictable, still harsh at times, but they had each other and their child. That was enough. That was life. And in that quiet moment, they understood the greatest truth of all. Survival was not only about enduring, it was about creating, protecting, and cherishing the fragile, beautiful moments that made life worth living.